So Lisa is going to share the first part of Mark 5 to verse 17. So she's going to do a reading of Mark 5 through verse 17 because we need to have it fresh in our memory. When I study this, I try to look up many words, sometimes almost all the words. And then I get a general idea of what God is trying to say to me by asking him and by believing that he's communicating to me. So this is a very interesting passage. So let's
Okay, then they came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gadarenes. And when he had come out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit who had his dwelling among the tombs. And no one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains. And the chains had been pulled apart by him, and the shackles broken in pieces. Neither could anyone tame him. And always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and worshipped him. And he cried out with a loud voice and said, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you by God that you do not torment me." For he said to him, "Come out of the man, unclean spirit." Then he asked him, "What is your name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Also he begged him earnestly that he would not send him out of the country. Now a large herd of swine was feeding near the mountains. So all the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the swine, that we may enter them." And at once Jesus gave them permission. Then the unclean spirits went out and entered the swine. There were about 2,000. And the herd ran violently down the steep place into the sea and drowned in the sea. So those who fed the swine fled, and they told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what was that had happened. Then they came to Jesus and saw that the one who had been demon-possessed and had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. And those who saw it told them how it had happened to him who had been demon-possessed, and about the swine. Then they began to plead with him to depart from their region.
Okay. All right. So the name of this whole exposition is called Crossing Over, Receiving Your Inheritance Under Grace. And it is not a coincidence that this is Mark 5, and 5 is the number of grace. This entire chapter and every single miracle in the chapter has to do with grace. And this chapter is on many levels. It's from the level of even being dead in our sin to being born again. But there is another level of symbolism, and that has to do with crossing over from law to grace. And you'll begin to see that as we take some things apart. So the first thing that Jesus mentions is that he went across the lake. So Jesus is going across. He's crossing over to the other side. This is the symbolism that gives us the framework for the entire chapter. The region that he's going to, Gergesenes, really, it is, when you look it up, there's no specific name for it. It's just called an unknown region. It's basically unknown territory. So Jesus was crossing over into unknown territory. And he was meeting a man. Grace is coming. Grace is meeting a man that's bound up. He's meeting this man consumed with unclean spirits. And remember, what we've talked about before, what unclean means a wrong mix.
What is it?
A wrong mix. So, and the people in the city had ostracized the man because of his behaviors. So the first thing about grace that we see is that when we cannot get to God, God is coming to us. That is just the way grace is. There's nothing we can do to get to God. We are paralyzed in our sin, dead in our sin, and God comes to us. Because, in Romans it says that when we were powerless, he demonstrated his own love by dying for us. So the next part is the demon was unable to be controlled with any chains. Nothing was able to destroy him, and that's why they ostracized him. They could not control him. He was ripping apart everything. Can you imagine the power that he had? They had never dealt with this before, and so, I was asking God, why, Lord, is he not able to be contained? And that's because Jesus didn't go to the cross yet, and the power of the enemy had not been stripped. So when Jesus was crossing over to the other side, into that unknown territory, he was dealing with something where he had authority with it, and there had never been that level of authority before, because he hadn't gone to the cross. And remember what the Bible says, he came so that the works of the devil might be destroyed. So, so the next part is that the place where this man is living. And he's living in a place called the tombs. And just by your initial thought, you might think tombs refers to a place of death. And although that is true, it has a very deeper meaning. It actually refers, when you look it up, it means a monument or a memorial that is set up as a resting place for an individual. It refers to a stone sepulcher where a dead body has been deposited. Now that is us dead in our sin. But the root, when you look up the root word for tomb, this is where this whole passage takes on a different meaning, a different level, because the tomb is a constant reminder of our sin. It says the word means constant recalling or remembering, actively bringing to mind, being mindful of your sin. Does that sound like being under the law?
Yeah.
So that, when you're under the law, that is a resting place where this is showing us that we're resting in our sin consciousness when we're under the law. We're constantly bringing to mind accusations of the enemy, things that we don't have, we don't know, we can't do. This is a place that we're resting. It is a tomb. It is literally a monument. So before grace, on many levels, we were in a place of sin consciousness. So understanding that before Christ had fulfilled the law, we were subject to it, and the grip of being mindful of our sin and disobedience constantly. The demonite man is symbolizing that we are prisoners in darkness before Christ, who went to the cross and fulfilled the law. And he is also symbolizing that sin consciousness that I just talked about. And if you remember, it says in verse 5, night and day